It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Iowa Heartlanders Director of Game Day Operations, Jarrett Mescher. How are you doing tonight?
Good. How about yourself, Brandon?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in working in professional sports?
Yeah. It's a rather simple answer, to be honest. It's one of those I grew up loving. Watching football and hockey and baseball. Hockey's always been my favorite. Maybe not necessarily the one on TV that I watch the most, but I've really enjoyed just watching those growing up. I played baseball and hockey from basically when I was born through high school and had some associations in college with some of those teams as well. But I guess it was one of those where if I wasn't going to make it all the way to play, I wanted to find a way to, stay involved and work in it in some way.
What was your experience like going to Minnesota State and getting to study in broadcast?
Yeah, I was really fortunate there to be in their sport management program. It was one of those I had a connection that had gone there a few years before me. And he kind of told me that it was a really good program with some really great professors. They did a little bit of switching on some of the professors right before I got there, and they brought in some people from kind of all over the United States that had good experience. That really helped. I mean, it was one of those too. I liked some of the classes, but I mean, the main thing from it was they really helped me get some great internships, and whether it was the connections in class with students or kind of knowing some more about the professors and stuff too. I was really fortunate, and I had a really great time when I was there at Minnesota State.
How was that experience like getting to be the intern at Minnesota State and working in the marketing and promotion side?
Yeah, again, the connections there were just outstanding. I had some just unbelievable mentors when I was there too. A couple I for sure would like to name would, be Greg Weiss and Scott Nelson, Corey Sherbring, Bailey Zabla, Dallas Gonzalez. Those are five right there that basically for 2 years, 2.5 years, whatever it was, I was able to work with them. They gave me a lot of opportunities. They allowed me a lot of time to hang around with them in the office and kind of pick their brain on a lot of things. They all came from different backgrounds and they all had kind of a different focus in sports. And it was one of those, like I said, I was really fortunate to get there where I was able to cross paths with all of them. Those are all people I try to stay in contact, not daily, at least weekly, and see how things are going with them. But yeah, it was a great experience. It was basically my first main internship in sports, and it definitely helped me get to where I've been since then as well.
What was that experience like getting to work on the marketing and promotions and on the collegiate level?
Yeah, it was really cool. And at Minnesota State Mankato, you really get a lot of different perspectives on it because it's Division I men's and women's hockey and Division II for all their other sports. So you're able to kind of experience a game day at the Division II level, from volleyball to football, et cetera. You're able to take in kind of, that perspective, but you're also able to um, get some major experience at the Division I level too with the hockey programs. The women's hockey program was definitely on the rise when I was there. They really struggled for a while before I was there, and the men's hockey program has had just unbelievable success in the last decade or so. So it was really cool. I mean, there was definitely days where, you were at the football field for an 11 a.m. kickoff, and you were at the hockey rink for a 7 p.m. puck drop, and you were able to definitely see different perspectives between the Division II and Division I level. But it gave me the opportunity to try a lot of different things and work with some smaller staffs for the Division II sports and some really big staffs for the Division I program.
What was that transition like for you from going from working on the collegiate level to then working in professional sports?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those where the teams I've been with so far since my college days have been rather smaller staffs compared to some of the other teams and leagues that I've been a part of. Um, it's one of those where There's kind of a difference in the ages that you work with between the college and the pro level too as well. In college, I had a lot of interns that were about my age, students as well, with maybe some younger people that oversaw us. And pro, you kind of see a lot of different ages. You have the ones that are just getting out of college, but you also have the ones that have been in the industry for 10, 15, 20 years. And then on top of it, it's dealing with the athletes as well. You're dealing with a student athlete that might be around the same age as you. When I was in college, basically half of the time had NIL and half didn't. And so you had that come into the picture as well. And then now, ever since I've been in pro hockey, you're dealing with professional athletes that do this for a living, and they basically are practicing and working out and preparing every day for that. That is their job, to be in pro sports. When on the student athlete perspective, you might have saw them at the library or in class, and you might have saw them in the gym too. But the focus really narrows when you enter the pro sports, for sure.
What was your experience like getting to work on the minor league baseball side and being the assistant general manager?
Yeah. I was really fortunate to work there as well. I mentioned earlier when we've been talking about how the connections got me places, and somebody that I was interning with at Mankato had told me he had worked a summer for the Wilmer Stingers in the Northwoods League, and he sent some of his old bosses there a note about me, and I was really fortunate. I was able to meet with them and kind of learn about what they were about. And like I said, I spent a year as just a kind of a marketing promotion intern and an event coordinator for them, and then was able to get hired full time as an assistant general manager. And it was one of those where Wilmer really allowed me to do a lot of different things. I had a little bit of experience in sales when I was there. I had some hospitality, some food and beverage experience, some script writing, some marketing promotions, event planning. It's one of those where we weren't a big staff, so everybody got to do a lot of different things. And it really kind of paved my way to know what I really did like in the sports industry, which was definitely the behind the scenes planning side for the event. But I also enjoyed my time in sales. It really opened my eyes to kind of the corporate sales side as well, and how corporate sales, blends in with what I do now here on the game ops side. So it was one of those, like I said, I was really fortunate. On top of it all, I was basically able to intern a summer when there wasn't a lot of sports jobs available. We were able to have some crowds in that summer of 2020 when COVID was all over, and I still was able to get some experience that summer as well, which was great. And like I said, I was really fortunate where that was basically my first job right out of school as well.
Of course, what were some of your roles and responsibility as that assistant general manager with working with the Wilmer Stingers?
Yeah, it was one of those where, again, it was the main focus was always going to be on the script writing part, and making sure our games started on time. You start getting to a level like that, and if you're not on time for your games, you can get fined, you can get in trouble if you're not keeping the league and the games on schedule. I was all in on the scripts. That was 100% my scripts that summer for the timing side and what the PA announcers would say. And I was able to get some experience on kind of the planning for the music side as well, and the entertainment side. Again, all things that keep fans coming back. I basically also spent those days of prepping on the beverage side. Getting concessions packed and food and beverage in the concessions, and making sure that stuff was all ready to go. We were covered on the concessions end. I was able to hire the interns and bring in our in-game host for the summer I was there, or for the summers I was there. And then on top of it, like I said, I was able to get some sales experience too, and being able to put your face in front of some business owners on the corporate side, but also just some one-on-one sales for suites and single game tickets and everything too. So it was a very wide variety of things I did, with obviously the script writing and the entertainment side being the main thing I did, but I was really able to try a lot of different things there in Wilmer.
How is that transition like from going from working in minor league baseball to now coming over to minor league hockey to work there?
Yeah, I would say the scheduling is so much different between the sports. I really liked my time in baseball. I really, really enjoy my time in hockey now. It's such a different atmosphere on your planning and your execution. So first with baseball, you know, we basically played from May through early August in Wilmer. And so basically you're planning, about 8 months to plan for those games with about 4 months worth of games. It felt like every single day you had a home game. Every single day you had a game, whether you're at home or away. When in hockey now, we play from October and you hope to play through June, basically, knowing that means you're in the playoffs and you're potentially having some success there. So, it's a more limited off season to plan and get ready to execute things. But on top of it, your games might be spread out a little bit more. Here in the ECHL, we play a 72 game schedule, 36 at home, 36 on the road. And basically we're planning, right now for our 36 home games this upcoming year, but we're doing it in more of a limited off season than when it was in baseball. Again, there's positives and negatives of both, as you can imagine. But yeah, it's been great. I've really liked both. I know hockey's probably my one I want to stay in just because I really do like the summer off season and the ability to, go hang out and catch a baseball game for fun rather than just for working as well.
Of course, what are some of your roles and responsibility as that director of game day operations?
Yeah, so kind of back with the Wilmer thing too. The the in-game entertainment side is a huge part of it, from the script writing to the timing sheet. I oversee the hiring of basically all elements of our in-game entertainment as well. So that includes our in-game music director, our in-game host, our public address announcers, about 10 to 15 game operations interns that help me in all elements of executing the games. I work with our production team here at the arena. And basically there's that quote unquote show caller role that I have here, where, there might be a penalty on the other team. So you play a funny clip making fun of them, or, you call up a song that kind of jokes on them getting a penalty. And that's something that it takes weeks and months to prep for every single game, because you basically have 10% of the year, that you have to be able to put on a good show for everybody. On top of that, like I said, there's the hiring, there's the in-game execution stuff, but there's also the behind the scenes of setting up the arena and working with our corporate partners to make sure all of their in-game sponsored elements are executed. Here at the arena, we have 2 video boards, we have a LED ribbon board, we have our music, obviously, and there might be a video or a ribbon board that coincides with a lot of our sponsorship deals. So you have to make sure that all of that stuff is covered, and there's a lot of sponsored elements that we do in our media timeouts as well. And that's grown every year. Again, this team's only entering year 3, coming up here in Coralville, Iowa, but it's one of those where every year the script's going to grow and it's going to get a little bit tougher to execute, but along the way we're all going to get better as well. It's one of those where, yes, I have a very game focused role, but if I'm not using the entire 12 months to plan for that, I will be behind in those shows and those games, won't go as we scheduled.
Of course, what does that process look like, as you said, with working with the public address announcers? What does that process look like in hiring and finding different public address announcers to be their PA for you?
Yeah, Brandon, we were really fortunate here. We're so close to the University of Iowa, and they have so many sports over for the Iowa Hawkeyes, where I kind of had some leads when I got here on being able to, maybe not approach the football public address announcer, but there's still the basketballs, the volleyballs, the soccer, all that going on. And we got some good leads from some other, fans and partners of ours, where they said, "Hey, we really like hearing, this voice at Iowa Hawkeye basketball or volleyball or whatever." So I did a couple interviews with some Hawkeye public address announcers. We opened it up a little bit through Teamwork Online as well, where I don't necessarily say it was a nationwide search, but we kind of opened it up to some other folks in Iowa, in the Midwest, that were maybe willing to relocate here. And basically it was as simple as them saying experience they've had as a public address announcer, or maybe they've taught or they've done something that their voice is used pretty often. And on top of it, you hope to get somebody that has some hockey experience as well. It's such a different animal from maybe basketball to hockey in terms of being the public address announcer. There's so many short, small comments that you say as a basketball announcer, whether it's saying a foul or something that's somebody gets a 3-pointer. When in hockey, it's more maybe a planned out goal read or explaining a penalty. So it was one of those where, yeah, we knew we might have a learning curve here in Iowa trying to get the right public address announcer, but have found too that we really enjoy and they do a great job and they make my life easy. Sometimes it's as easy as me just pointing down at the script that I've provided for them and they read it and we go over it pregame. We make sure we got all the pronunciations right and everything, but we have a really good system here where I'm right next to our music director and our public address announcer, where at all times we're on the same page. Obviously, I'm communicating with a lot of other people throughout the night as well, but between those people being right there, it makes that a lot easier for me.
Of course, so what are some of the things that you do as the director of game day operations behind the scenes that fans might not know that happens before the game ever comes about?
Yeah, we mentioned those sponsorship elements earlier. That's a huge part. Maybe one of the banks in town has something that is going to cover 12 games or 18 games. Maybe it'll cover all 36. So all in the off season, I'm working with them on, how their video works or how their graphics are looking or how their PA read is looking. So you have to be able to bring all of those points plus all of the ECHL league points that you have to cover in games. There's a couple warnings about flying pucks and everything that you have to be able to fit in your script. You have to be able to keep the opposing team and our home team on the same schedule where they know when to come onto the ice for pregame and after intermissions. Everybody has to be on the same page there. The refs need to know when they're supposed to be onto the ice as well. I would say another huge piece is just being able to cover everything pregame and through media timeouts. And, another huge part is theme nights, right? Something that we've had great success here in both years is our military appreciation night. And, there's a lot of people that you have to be able to make sure you have the right pronunciations and titles and making sure you're being thoughtful with how you say a few things. Maybe there's a military member that has passed that you have to be really careful with the way that verbiage is written in the script. It's one of those where every second of the pregame has to be planned out and everything has to be on schedule and if it's not, it can get off the rails real quick. And if I don't have everybody on our game ops staff on the same page, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So I've been asked that question a few times on maybe what the toughest part is. And I think it's just the fact that I know in my head how that entire time from the doors opening in the arena to when everybody leaves for the night, how it should go. But if one person along the way isn't on that same plan as me, things can go wrong. So I have to be able to basically explain my thought process to maybe as much as 50 people a night between TV and radio and our production team, our interns, our announcers. So yeah, I know I threw a lot out there, but it's one of those where I have to be able to have everybody on the same page, and that takes weeks of planning and to make sure I'm ready to go so I can explain it to a lot of different people.
Of course, what does that process look like with you with working with, let's say, the big businesses like the banks to get sponsorships versus working with like maybe your local businesses to get like maybe one or two brand deals for that particular game?
Yeah, I think it's important to mention that regardless of if they spend 2 cents with us, or if they spend $500,000 with us, you have to be able to approach them in a very appropriate way. It's really important, and I think we do a really good job here of saying, hey, we're not just looking for your money. We're looking for a partnership. We're looking for something that can benefit both parties. If we're able to host, an event with some of our players and maybe some of our staff at the local, let's say, bowling alley, there's the potential for that bowling alley to have a really good night between, getting people to bowl and the food and beverage they're getting along the way. But on top of it, maybe some of those people that are bowling are able to come to an Iowa Heartlanders game and they're able to have a really fun time. And next thing you know, you have somebody that likes the bowling side and they like the hockey side of coming to Heartlanders games. And all of a sudden that package with those businesses looks really beneficial for both. So like I said, it's one of those where I don't know if I necessarily go into or if I approach it different between a smaller local business and some really big ones. But it's important to know the values of who we are with the Heartlanders, but also know the values of those businesses. Because once those are kind of in line, you usually can come up with a pretty good package for them.
Of course, for you, what does it look like after the game is all finished? What does your day in a life look like after the game is finished?
Yeah, a huge thing that determines that is definitely what we have on schedule for the next few days. The big thing is if the arena has another event that comes in after us, we do 100% have to clear out our items. We don't have any storage in the arena; it has to all come back to our office. So if we plan a Saturday night and there's a Sunday concert or something else going on in the arena on Sunday, we'll spend that next hour or so or whatever it might be to totally clear out the arena and make sure we leave it as good as when we got in there. Directly after the game, I always try to have a meeting with my game ops staff. I do a real quick over the headset meeting with the production staff I work with throughout the night. I have an earpiece with the game ops staff, the interns throughout the whole game, and I can usually hear if there's issues that come up through the earpiece. And we can go over that. Otherwise, I just give them a real brief rundown of what I really liked and what I think can be a little better for next game with them. They learn and they're so good and they do a really good job. So that meeting usually isn't more than a few minutes. And then, like I said, we get into the cleaning part and we make sure everything's ready to go. And if it's flipped and we play again at home the next night, or if we play on a Wednesday and we play that Friday, I usually get right back into the office and I usually I write down some notes that I had from the night. And maybe there's some other things I want to incorporate into the script for the next game. But it's one of those where sometimes I got to get right back to work and it might lead to a really late night here. But if I'm able to use the momentum of executing a really good game, it usually motivates you to be able to work for a little bit longer and get a few more things done. But if it's one of those where we get a few things done and there's still some time, we're not afraid as a staff to go have some fun too, whether it's, grab a drink or grab a bite to eat somewhere around here and just kind of hang out and have some fun for the rest of the night too. But yeah, it can change depending on what I said, like I said, what's on the schedule for the next little bit. But for the most part, it's usually just getting ready for the next game.
Of course, how are you able to balance work life as a director of game day operations and life outside of hockey?
Yeah, I've been asked that question a few times, and sometimes the answer is actually really easy because since I am such a hockey nerd, where sometimes life out of work just includes more hockey. To be honest, I really enjoy playing NHL on Xbox with some of my friends. I really love going to different venues and seeing what they do on their operations side, on their promotional side. On the arena side as well, seeing how they're doing different, concourse tables or different attractions or how their concession stands look. But otherwise, I live a pretty simple life where, I like watching movies, I like watching TV shows, listening to some music, hanging out with some friends, visiting family when I can. But yeah, it can definitely be a real daunting task in season where you got to make some sacrifices. You're not going to see some people as much as you want, but just being able to check in with them through a phone call or FaceTime, whatever it is, every once in a while is always well worth it as well.
Of course, what is that process like getting to go to different away games and seeing what they're doing on the game day operation sides to then take over to our Heartlanders?
Yeah, it's one of those where I always like making new connections in the operations side as well. So if it's a building I haven't been to before, I usually send a quick email to their game ops director or somebody that's at least in the operations field. It might be somebody on the production team. It might be the public address announcer, whoever it might be. I usually just shoot them a note that I'm excited to go and I'm excited to kind of see what they do. If they have a few minutes after the game, I usually try to check in with them and just kind of introduce myself and kind of explain from my perspective what I saw. Obviously, you're going to focus on the positives, but it's one of those where I try to get to the building as soon as I can. Usually when doors open, so I can do a couple laps. I can see kind of what they're doing on their concourse, but I also make sure I give myself enough time to get back to my seat for warm-ups or the game, or especially that pregame lead up, the hype videos, the getting the lights ready to go and having the player announcements be a big part. Obviously within the game, I like also just the hockey part too. I played, I still understand the game, I think pretty well. And I still like seeing that, but I of course see what they do at their media timeouts, what kind of music they're playing, what's getting their crowd ready. Is it, are they kind of a rock music type crowd where the rock music's getting them going, or is it maybe a newer hip hop song, whatever it might be? It's usually one of those where the simple answer is using your eyes and ears can tell you a lot about how teams do their operations.
What are some of the things that you learn now that you didn't know before working in game day operations?
Yeah, it's one of those where you maybe aren't prepared 100% for the time commitment and the hours to put in, but that's okay. It's one of those where I really enjoy it, and like I really can't think of myself at this current moment doing anything else. I don't know if there's necessarily a ton else that from the game ops side I wasn't prepared for. I know more than ever now that it's important to, yes, I plan out the whole pregame and in game as best I can. That intermissions have to be, down to the second too. But it's one of those where sometimes within the game you have to just let it come to yourself. It's one of those where if our team, has a fantastic first period, maybe we're getting a couple goals early and we're up 2-0 or something within the first 10 minutes. You want to keep the crowd going. Maybe we had an advertisement read that we wanted to do for a business around here, and you might have to put that on pause for a little bit because the crowd's really going for it right now, and we're really trying to help the Heartlanders get to goal number 3 or whatever it might be. There might be a fight that really gets the crowd going, as well. So really playing into how the game's going is such a huge part, right? You're probably not playing your absolute pump up songs if you're down 5-1 late in the third period. You'll save that for the next game. It's one of those where I never try to force anything. I try to let the game come to me as well, and that's something that some really good mentors of mine explained to me. And the more games I'm able to show call, the better the better I get. And it's one of those where sometimes you just got to take a step back and let the crowd go to work too. It might not be a time to throw up a noise meter or something on the video board. Sometimes you just got to let them go to work.
Of course, what are some of your favorite memories and moments working with the Iowa Heartlanders?
Yeah, yeah, it's one of those where obviously the first game in team history was an absolute blast. One of those we scored, I think it was like 19 seconds into our first ever game. Just an unbelievable moment that you can't replicate. It's almost something, we joke that they make movies about that, right? That first game in team history, I really couldn't tell you much about it. I remember being so overwhelmed and nervous but also super excited for it. And I kind of wish I would have been able to remember more about it, but I do remember that being a great memory. Obviously, all the wins are great. All the relationships you make are just fantastic. The connections you make are awesome. It's one of those that, yes, in the front office, we maybe don't interact with the players 100% of the time, but you do get to know a lot of the guys, and some of them you get to know really well, and you kind of get to hear their paths in hockey. And so pretty soon you're getting to know perspectives of the players, other staff in the league, coaches, referees, et cetera. And pretty soon you're able to just kind of share some really fun stories about how much, everybody loves hockey. And It's one of those where, um, the relationships along the way are just great. And another, two fun memories are after the last games of the season. Both years I've been here, where it's just you're able to really notice how much work you were able to put in for those 36 home games and how much fun you were able to have. And it's one of those I try to never take it for granted. We're 72 home games in to this team's history, and we're going to be celebrating our 100th home game in team history this upcoming season. And you try to just take a little small memory from all those games to be able to take for the future and know that you had just an outstanding time as well.
What advice would you give those people that are looking to work in professional sports?
Yeah, it's one of those where I remember kind of early on in classes, you heard the word connections like a million times, and you were like, I get it, right? I get that I need to know people to get into this industry, but it is one of those where it's so true. Where if you know a few people, through classes, professors, and pretty soon you're meeting more people. You're meeting more people, and next thing you know, it's one of those small world things where I'm a Tampa Bay Lightning fan, so all of a sudden I know a connection who's close with somebody in the operations department with with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and next thing you know, it's a crazy connection. So the connections are huge. Being able to take internships that can really help you out. I mentioned a few of them earlier in this call that some of the memories or some of the people that I've met have introduced me to other people. And next thing you know, you got people on your behalf helping you, get new jobs and meet new people. And it's one of those where I always encourage within the internship to try to meet everybody you can. Yeah, you might be in the game ops or the marketing department of the sports team you're working for, but meet people from the communication side, meet people from the other different types of the business, meet those people and have those relationships, keep up with them along the way, and don't be afraid to reach out to a connection every once in a while too and just see how they're doing. It's one of those where sometimes I feel like we in the sports world, you become so overwhelmed with maybe getting a connection to somebody for your favorite sports team that you get the LinkedIn connection and then all of a sudden you never message them and you're just a name. Don't be afraid to check in with people, and continue to have fun along the way too. But even if it's a project that right away maybe doesn't seem like it's going to be super helpful, it usually is, and there's usually something from every project you work on that can help you in the future. And even if it's not a direct correlation, it might be as something as just having a little bit of hard work along the way as well.
What advice would you give those people that are looking to work inside game day operations for a professional sports team?
Yeah, it was one of those where actually when I was at Mankato, I was actually on the marketing promotion side. I know we talked about that earlier, and there was an operations side in the Mankato athletic department that I never interned with them. It's at some schools the marketing side is the one that does the event planning or the game planning, and on some schools the operations is going to be the event planning. Obviously, here in Iowa, the event planning and the game planning goes to the operations department. But sometimes it's one of those where, as long as you're on board with a team or a school or whatever it might be, if you're able to learn different parts of what makes a game happen, that's usually a great start in the operations department. If you're setting up the concourse for a team or for a league, whatever it might be, pretty soon you're setting up the concourse, and then you might be doing the scoreboard at a local high school game, or you're pressing buttons for the video board, for a game, or you're playing the music at a baseball game or whatever it might be. As long as you're able to take different aspects of basically the operation side that I'm in now, the entertainment side, I sometimes like to say, as long as you're able to practice different things, regardless of the scale, that usually can help. And obviously, I was really fortunate as well to have a big part in that in Mankato and in Wilmer before I was here. Where yes, I had never on my resume directly said that I had worked in game operations for a team, but I had done so many things that's within that department with those other teams, and it really helped me get the role as well. So it's one of those, if I'm hiring somebody, I don't necessarily look for them to have direct game operations experience. I just want to hear about the experience they do have. And I want to see what we can blend our internship with their experiences they've already had to see how I can help them and how I can help in that game planning and that event planning role. So yeah, it's overall, it's one of those where it's mainly the connections and the experience. It's one of those, like I said, it might not be a direct game operations role, but as long as you're able to practice a few different things, that can usually help.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the Iowa Heartlanders app?
Yeah, so the Iowa Heartlanders, it's really simple. Just iowaheartlanders.com is our website. Go Heartlanders is our tag on a lot of social. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn. Obviously, my emails on our Iowa Heartlanders website. Sometimes I get a few just random emails asking for quick career advice or whatever from a couple students. Don't be intimidated by me. I was just a student a few years ago. I graduated in the spring of 21. So don't be intimidated. But like I said, shoot me a note on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever it is. I wouldn't say I'm very hard to find, and I'm always here because, even a few years ago, I was that student that was hoping someday I could work in pro sports. So
thank you again, Jarrett Mescher, for your interview, and best luck in your future with the Iowa Heartlanders as the Director of Game Day Operations.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. It was a great time.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Jarrett Mescher, for your interview, and best luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.